Working on dividing fractions. I'm going to teach you two different ways. Both will give you the correct answer when dividing fractions. One way you will need to get a common denominator. The second way you're going to using your multiplication skills. Since we need to be working on common denominators, or as that's one way to divide, we're going to practice with a couple of problems. You can go ahead and pause the screen, and then we will come back and we'll work on them. All right, if we're taking a look at 2/3 and 3/4, a common denominator between the two is 12. They both have 12 in common. Looking at 3/4 and 2, the closest number that they would have in common is 4. Remember, whenever we have a whole number, it is always over 1. 3/5 and 7/8, common denominator of 40. 1/4 and 5/8, the lowest common denominator is 8. Lowest common denominator for 1/8 and 2/3 is going to be 24. And 1/3, 1/4, and 5/12, they all have 12 in common. Now remember, it can be any number that's a multiple of their lowest common multiple. So if you said 24, if you said 36, those would all be answers. If you said 4 or 8 here, that would work as well. If you would have said 32, because you just multiplied 4 times 8, that would work as well. But the numbers that I wrote down are the lowest common multiples, the lowest number that they both have in common. All right, taking a look at your math message. How many 2-pound boxes of candy can be made from 10 pounds of candy? This is a division problem. And so you're going to have to divide. And hopefully by the end of this lesson, you can go back to this math message and you'll be able to answer it. In your math journal on page 288, it steps you through the common denominator division. This is one way to do it. I strongly suggest putting this into your notes. The first step is you have to rename each fraction using a common denominator, and then you're just going to divide straight across. And we're going to take a look at a few examples with that now. The idea is if I had 4 and I divide it into 2/3, what would that actually look like? So here you can see that we had 4 full circles, and 2 out of the 3 were linked together because those were our sections. Okay, so 2/3. Here we had a borrow for 1 from each, borrow for 1 from each. So how many groups did we have all together? Well, we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 4 divided by 2/3 is going to equal 6. We could also have looked and said, you know what, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 thirds with 12 equal sections, and we're dividing them by 2/3, and we got 6. So how to solve that division with a common denominator? The first way, that is using your math journal, is that you need to rename the numbers using common denominators, just like if you were adding or subtracting fractions. You need to convert or change mixed numbers into improper fractions. So if I had 2 and 1/2, that is the same thing as 5 halves. Remember, 2 times 2 is 4, plus the 1 is 5. Denominator stays the same. Then what you need to do is simply just divide the numerators. So if we go back to this problem, 12 divided by 2 is 6, and since 3 divided by 3 is 1, and remember, whenever we have something over 1, it's always just that top number. The second way, a way that a lot of our parents know how to divide fractions, is to flip or reciprocate the second number. So instead of saying, if we look at our problem of 8/5 divided by 3/4, I can reciprocate or change the second fraction. So all I did was make the 4 go on the top and the 3 on the bottom. I reciprocate it, And then I need to just multiply straight across. So 8 times 4 is 32. 5 times 3 is 15. If we were to go ahead and notice that this was top heavy, so how many times does 15 go into 32 without going over? And that is twice. 15 times 2 is 30. We need to get to 32, so that's 2/5. Now, if we're taking a look at our last answer, or our last way to solve this problem, so if I go ahead and get rid of my 4/3, bring back over my 3/4, sorry about this. So bring back my 3/4 because that was the original problem. It said that we needed to first get a common denominator. What is the common denominator between 5 and 4? And if you said 20, so we need to get both of them into 20th. How do we go from 5 to 20? We multiplied it by 4, so 8 times 4 is 32. And then if we were going from 4 to 20, multiplying it by 5, and then 3 times 5 is 15. Then if we were to divide straight across, 32 divided by 15, which is the same thing as looking like this, correct? 32, remember this is a division bar. 32 15ths, 20 divided by 20 is going to be 1. So we're back to that same spot of that 32 15ths, which we know is equal to 2 and 2/15. Taking a look, here are two examples of how to, or two different problems, excuse me, that of division. I'm going to show you with the flipping reciprocating, and the reason I'm going to show you it this way is because it is the easiest way that you don't have to have common denominators. All you have to remember is to flip or switch that second number. So if I were to take 3/4 divided by 1/6, I'm going to reciprocate it. It was 1/6. Now we're going to make it 6/1. When I reciprocate it, I'm no longer doing division, but we are multiplying. And multiplying tells us to multiply straight across. 6 times 3 is 18. 4 times 1 is 4. Now we have a top heavy, so we have to ask ourselves, how many times does 4 go into 18 without going over? And if we said 4, that is correct. 4 times 4 is 16. 2 left over, so 4 2/4, which we also know is 4 1/2. Taking a look at the next example, 5/4 divided by 2/3. First thing that we need to do is reciprocate. So flipping 2/3 to make it 3/2. And when I reciprocate, I also have to change our division to multiplication. And then multiplication rules tell us to multiply straight across. 5 times 3, 15. 4 times 2, 8. We should see that it is top heavy. How many times does 8 go into 15 without going over? Once. 7 remaining. So 1 7/8. You're going to be needing to do your math journal pages. Make sure that you're taking a look to see which problems you actually need to complete to receive a score. The big idea is that you're going to think about which way that you are going to want to divide your fraction. There are two ways. Remember, the one way tells us to flip or reciprocate the second fraction and then multiply straight across. The one that Ms. Swantek thinks is the easiest. Otherwise, you can convert or change your fractions into common denominators, and you just divide your numerators, and that will give you the same exact answer. If you follow those steps, and if you're taking great notes and you're using your notes, I have no doubt that you are going to be successful with this lesson.